65 million years ago, a 10-kilometer diameter asteroid hit the Yucatan Peninsula, Mexico, causing such a drastic environmental change that the massive, slow-moving dinosaurs could not survive. Instead, it was the small, furry, agile, and adaptable mammals that managed to survive and eventually evolve in what we are today. To me, this story is similar to the way things are impacting our current environment. They are transforming our world at an impressive speed, and agility has become essential for success. Guys, this also applies to our living context. Not in a literal way, well, not for the moment. But if we cling to a linear and rigid approach, believing ourselves to be the experts, we could face a fate similar to that of the dinosaur. It's time to adapt and be agile to thriving in this new technological environment or new reality. To understand these differences between these concepts, imagine that if the speed of cars had been increasing at the same rate as Moore's law, yes, we would have already achieved cars that were faster than the speed of light today. Just wrap your head around that in terms of linear versus exponential. Any company designed for success in the 20th century is doomed to fail in the 21st century. David Rose, angel investor. Death of the linear organization. So, let's talk about organizations have been evolving to keep up with current circumstances. Large companies exist because their internal transaction costs are cheaper than the external transaction cost. Ronald Coase, Nobel Prize in economics. If we look at the classical structure of an organization at a global level, our organizations, whether governments, departments, or corporations, often derive from a hierarchical kind of model, similar to that of an army and visually pyramidal, with a top-down flow of the command and control that work well in its context of scarcity and aggression in the short term. This approach was effective for products and services targeted at a relatively constant market. Innovation used to arise internally and then be pushed outward. However, these organizations tend to be risk-averse, and their adoption rate is slow, which ironically makes them quite risky. Performance evaluations, key performance indicators, KPIs, and the rigid structures are designed to generate bureaucratic distrust towards employees. This setup has been the context and framework predominant for organizational design from the Industrial Revolution to the present day. I call this the resistance of the immune system. The challenges with the law of these large corporations are in their immune system, because when you try to make a major change that breaks with the organization tradition, there is often resistance. It is as if the company's immune system kicks in and start arguing why it is impossible to change things. You probably heard phrases like, "It can't be done that way, there's no budget for that, it's never been tried before, that's not my job, this is not my responsibility. If we launch it like this, the competition may take advantage if we make these changes," among other concerns. This mentality, even in our families, this immune system or closed mind frame, represents significant challenge that affects systems in major companies. Globally, the situation is further complicated in the governmental sphere, where regulation and politics act as the immune system. In addition, this problem intensifies in the public sector, where taxes compete against Uber and bankers are in fight with Bitcoin, which adds an extra layer of complexity. Here are the extra theses. The notion of exo-knowledge emerged with its thesis on how companies resist the passage of time by seeking innovation, while this resistance presents itself in the form of an immune system that attacks this idea. This finding is revealing in the context of the innovator's dilemma, as recognizing and understanding that resources have been wasted by going in the wrong direction. At this point, not only has the problem been diagnosed in the organization itself, but a highly systematic methodology has also been developed. In an astonishingly short time, this method begins to effectively alter the organization's immune system. This helps to unleash its exceptional capabilities. It seeks to pursue innovation and explore new frontiers. The way this process is carried out is surprisingly concise, very elegant, and effective. it becomes evident that it attacks as a deep and accelerated catalyst. Virtually no organization in the world, regardless of its size or nature, will be excluded from experiencing this phenomenon and taking advantage of this new methodology. Large organizations, which are currently the cornerstone of how we can do business and marketing in the contemporary world, will undergo radical change. The old structure will no longer be compatible with this new direction. So, to give you some exemplary cases, large companies are structured on the basis of two fundamental elements. One, optimization for predictability, seeking to anticipate and plan situations with precision. Second, efficiency as the main objective of its operation. So let's take the example of a McDonald's that seeks to maintain the uniformity of its Big Mac across 1 billion locations around the world. This is achieved through standardized supply chains and a linear product strategy. However, it is very important to note that most large organizations today are designed to operate in a static, incremental, and linear environments, which do not experience significant changes to preserve their status quo. However, the world we live in with AI, for example, no longer fits these dynamics, as we are witnessing dramatic, radically conscious transformation in a matter of hours. Another outstanding illustrative example is that of Marriott Hotels today, whose value is approximately 15 billion. However, it turns out that if Marriott had launched initiatives like Airbnb, TripAdvisor, or Booking.com, its market cap would amount to around 250 trillion, or about 5 times its current value. The irony of this situation is that all of these ideas germinated within Marriott, but the fear of affecting its existing market cap value at 50 billion prevent these ideas from prospering, leaving on the table the possibility of acquiring an additional $200 billion. This pattern is evident in many large companies around the world. Any company designed for success in the 20th century will be doomed to failure in the 21st century. Keep in mind that as we look at this new generation of exponential organization or structure, there is no single MBA program in the world that can teach you how to build an Uber, a Netflix, a Spotify, an OpenAI, etc. Current business administration and MBA programs in the world teach you how to build a 20th century organization or how to be an employee or working one. This is a massive update that is needed in our entire education system and teaching systems on how this works. In the new era of the digital revolution, I'll dare to say that the vast majority are not updating their educational programs. This is worrying as more automation replaces jobs on the borders. And that is why creators, digital educators with modern, multidisciplinary skills stands out in this new gig economy, in this new decentralized digital economy. Digital economy and the ineffectiveness of experts in a decentralized ecosystem. I'm beginning to understand a fundamental change that has occurred since 2008, which refers to the way business organizations or companies are developed. This change seems to have originated around the time that Amazon launched its web services, as it is now possible to incorporate expenses that were previously not reflected in the balance sheet and treated as real variable costs. If you are a new entrepreneur like me, with an idea to build a startup or an EXO, and if you have a set of initial strategies, this model will be your Bible. But what can you do when it scales? How can you proceed when you have to lead an organization of thousands of people, facing biases, prejudices? Okay, you will say, I delegate and hire the experts who have played a fundamental role, but the reality is that with the rapid acceleration of technologies, these experts are often outdated, rooted in their usual approach, clinging to executing tasks in the same way that they are used to. And that possibly will be discontinued, as changing their approach will distance them from their expert positions. This is very strong to say, but it's the reality. It's true that they have the experience to be able to pivot and readapt. Yeah, but the flow of information about the structures and technologies that have become obsolete due to this disruption are having an impact on strategy and the way operations are carried out. If they do not adapt to these novelties, they may no longer be considered experts. In fact, an expert is someone who can advise you on what not to do something. The day something is really a breakthrough is when very crazy ideas emerge. If you have highly innovative ideas when it comes to large organizations, regardless of their size, you can discern if they truly want to achieve exponential progress within their entity. Your area of action will be in the department or moment of generation of transcendental ideas. Otherwise, if you do not have or lack such a department or blocks of time dedicated to this, you find yourself stagnant in a process of gradual and linear growth, which implies that you are regressing in terms of survival and adaptability. Believe me, the world is so fucking faster than you think. I know this generates a lot of uncertainty and even turns the guts, but then what can we do about it? Hawk's eye view. The first thing we can do is understand our starting point. Have our eyes all wide open and observe with precision where we are standing, like an all-eyes view. By understanding the moment in history with an open mind is essential to closely follow this intersection and convergence of technology, of course, to polish the quality of our decision and level of discernment. As Seneca says, luck is where preparation and opportunity meet. Great opportunities are taken in the right place at the right time with the right preparation and perception. Curiosity, creativity, and novelty will guide you towards the flow of the rapid disruption whole. I suggest you start focusing your energy with these seminar-free resources. The Singularity is Near by Ray Kurzweil. Exponential Organization 1 and 2 by Peter Diamandis, Sullivan Ray Kurzweil. Bold by Stephen Kotler. And The Art of the Impossible by Stephen Kotler. If you come to this far, it means that you have the humility to recognize your intellectual potential and a very open mind to generate a significant and transcendental impact on the history of our human species. So, thank you for lending me this second of your time.